Hey, what's up? So, what I would like to do is go with you through some notes I took a couple of weeks ago. There was a family video night, as we have every week, and we watch all kinds of kids' movies. I have two daughters, and we watched a movie which I don't remember the name or exactly what it was about, other than that it had to do with a girl who lived within a tribe and who wanted to do something that she really wanted to do, and in a way you could say it was going against what the tribe thought was the best thing to do. And that got me thinking about ego, right? Because why would this girl who's brought up in a tribe, want something different than what the tribe has taught her? It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense because it's not how things happen. But if you take the modern day person and you put her in a tribe, then that's what she would rub up against. She would have her own dreams and her own desires, and the tribe would not really allow her to have those, because in the tribal days you would be part of the tribe. And it's a very interesting thing to look at, the contrast between tribal culture and, let's say, ego culture, the culture we live in now, where individualization is a big part, identification is a big part, right? Everybody wants to have success, wants to be famous and rich and successful, and we all have our own stories, and we all focus on our own stories. So what I wrote down is this. I was writing down, ego is making it personal. That's what ego does. Basically, ego allows you or causes you to interpret the world through the separated self. And I wrote next to that, in fact, the self is separation. The moment you talk about a self, that is separation. This idea of the self is the idea of separation. Taking the whole, the tribe, the culture, and saying, no, I'm a differentiated part of that. I'm someone else. I'm myself. And myself is separated. So what you're doing is you're separating yourself and you're putting yourself in the center of the story. This is identity. Identifying yourself as a separated entity from another entity. Where the self uses the value system of the culture to glorify itself. So that's interesting, because on the one hand you're separating yourself from the culture, and in our modern day culture that is what the culture is telling you to do, but it also uses this culture to decide how to glorify itself. So if you look at the modern day culture, we're saying you're an individual self, you have an identity, you have to have things where we can recognize you for who you are, you have to separate yourself, but at the same time, we, the culture, dictate how you can separate yourself, how you can make yourself into a knowable thing, how to dress up your identity, what determines what is good or bad or differentiated. The value system is decided by the culture. It's interesting. In the tribe world, glory was reached by strengthening the tribe. So, in the tribal culture, what would bring you glory was if you did something that strengthened the tribe. So, if the tribe is always looking for food, if you kill a bison, you are strengthening the tribe. It's not about you having as many bisons as is possible, and that would make you the richest man of the tribe. No, the point of your glory would be how much food did you contribute to the tribe, right? It would be the same as if we wouldn't glorify people for how rich they were, but how much taxes they paid, right? Or maybe we would cap how much money one would have, and then whatever someone would earn that would overflow that maximum. That's how we kept score of who's our hero. The one who's contributed the most to the tribe and strengthens the tribe. So what you could say there is that in a way what you're trying to do is to seek balance. Meaning you're trying to perpetuate the tribe. So you are helping the tribe live in balance with nature, with its surroundings. That's what you're doing. You're strengthening the balance there is. The tribe exists and wants to continue existing, and you're helping the tribe exist. Nowadays, in this modern age, glory is found by strengthening the self. And you could say that it is found by taking from the tribe, and in that regard creating unbalance within the tribe. Because now we live in an age where if I take from you, and I take a lot from you, and I take a lot from other people, you all have less, and I have extremely more. That's where glory is found. So it's not in finding the balance within the tribe or the tribe within the bigger picture, but it's finding unbalance. So glory these days is about weakening the rest and thus strengthening the self. So creating unbalance in the world is where we glorify people. If you can earn 1,000 times more than I can, then you're the hero and I'm the sucker. It's the value system of the modern culture that tells us that this is where glory is to be found. By separating more, by creating yourself as a more, as a better identifiable thing, as a more extreme thing, as a more separate thing from the rest, you find glory. So it's not in seeking connection with the tribe or nature or the universe. It's by separating yourself from the tribe and nature and the universe that glory is found. But culture isn't bad. Culture is just functioning. Culture just works the way it does to combine a people. It's the contents of the culture that decides whether or not the culture will thrive and whether its individuals will thrive and whether there will be balance or unbalance. It's whatever the culture tells its people that is good, that can create the unbalance. And so you could say, right, you have this book that's called Ego is the Enemy, and there was a time when I would say, no, ego isn't the enemy, it's culture that's the enemy, because ego is just functioning in its way and it uses whatever the culture gives it to function. And you can't stop culture, and you can't stop ego, and you can't get rid of ego. So it's not an enemy, it's just part of what makes you a person. That's what I started the whole thing with. Ego is making it personal. That's what the ego does. That's how you are a person, because you have an ego. And culture feeds you with how you become that person and what your task is. What is your function as a person? That is taught by culture. Now, culture itself isn't evil either. It's just that's what culture does. It binds people, and to bind it, it has to have certain laws and ideas, and right, everybody should share some things in order for us to be a tribe or a culture, right? You could say that what makes individuals into a group is a shared vision, a shared goal. Something is shared, and we call it culture. So culture is just functioning. It's the culture contents that you could label the enemy. Because if it's divisional, if the contents of culture tells its participants that they should fight against each other, now you have found the enemy. Culture's telling you it's the other people, but really it's the contents of the culture that is dividing the people. So if there is an enemy to be found, it is the contents of culture. And so instead of fighting some internal battle against your nature, all stoic-like, we have to face the fact and take a responsibility that we need to take control collectively over the contents of our culture. And in essence, what I'm saying is we need to take control collectively of our value system. Because right now, the value system is laid over us. We're not in control. We're not deciding what our value system should be. We are taking the value system as a given and then operating within that. And we think we know what is logical, and we think we know what is normal, and we think what we know what we could expect from other people and what is expected of us. But that's just the contents of the culture. We haven't had a say in that. We're little slaves of the system. How do you say this? There's a puppeteer, and it's called culture, and it's playing us. So we should take collective control of our value system, and in that way we get to control what we tell ourselves and our children about what is going on and what makes you find glory. If we had influence over the narrative about what glory is, we could decide what direction culture would take and what direction culture would take us. If we make culture about who reaches Mars as the first person, then everybody's going to be focused on getting to Mars And that's what our culture is about, getting to Mars, because that's what we made important. If we would have made it important that we all want to live freely and have enough food and shelter and clothing and have like this basic standard of living for everyone, if that was what culture would say is the most important, we would focus on that. Our brightest minds would focus on that, because that's where glory is found. The one who causes what culture says is what is needed, he is the one who gets the glory. So, this ego is the enemy idea is really a tactic of culture to focus the will to change inward, to fight an everlasting, debilitating war with the self, out of need of self-glorification, which is the greatest weapon of culture via deception and confusion. Letting all people fight for self-glorification through self-annihilation and self-denial, which in fact makes men be disappointed and weak, forfeiting self-reliance in search of the impossible striving for self-destruction, which is really the spiritual game, right? If you want to be perfect, you got to be non-existent, have no emotion, have no preference, having nothing. Just focus on that first, and then we'll talk about how the outside world is, right? First, do that. In fact, by searching for self-glorification through that means, we are enslaving ourselves to the culture in the process, as culture must validate the mostly temporal victory of this glorification. So the glorification of the self has been wholly externalized and really only achieved by self-denial, and not in the way that it used to be in the tribe, where you would deny yourself the complete loot of whatever you would kill or find. You have to give it to the culture, to the tribe, but more as in you yourself as an individual have to destroy what makes you in order to have some sort of glory. You have to be completely in line with what some external thing says. So it's about destroying yourself and aligning with the culture, that culture will glorify you. So really, culture has made self-glorification only achievable by enforcing the culture. Now this isn't a bad thing, this is a natural thing, right? Culture will always look to the ones that support the culture to survive and thrive as their heroes. So that's what the cultural story always will be. It just depends on how it wants to grow and thrive and survive. You could say that at this point in our reality, we have a culture with a destructive content. So really, it's about winning and destroying that you find glory. Now, it's not how we say it. We say the exact opposite. It's about creating. It's about, right, advancing the technology and the culture. But really, it's done at the expense of other people, nature. The whole universe has to fucking be killed in order for you to be glorified. So we have a destructive culture. Modern culture is destructive and based in imbalance. It is based in one-sidedness and in the zero-sum game. And thus, a never-ending battle with no winner will ensue. And this idea about ego as being the enemy is really a weapon of the real enemy to distract and debilitate its enemy. You. Us, the collective. The collective is destroyed by having its separate elements become more selfish, by inward fighting both within itself and between its participants. The more self-absorbed we are, the weaker we can fight this destructive culture, the contents of our culture, which is destructive. We're either fighting for self-glory by fighting others, divide and conquer, or by having the individual fight himself and withdraw from the battlefield in search of eternal moral glorification, internal divide and conquer. culture remains out of focus as an enemy, and with each battle, both the battle between people and the one within, enforces and strengthens this culture and weakens its possible opponents. It ends up making the people more dependent on it. So we're not being held by culture to be individuals and to be strong. What culture does is weaken us. So we need it more and more and more and more. And so we are in this process of individualization, and really this process has been taken over by the contents of culture, and it's really the other way around. We're becoming totally dependent. We are becoming only individual in the way that we subscribe to what the external tells us an individual is. And so all moral discussion leads to internal division within the people which are governed by culture. Even environmental things become the weapon of culture to appeal to the child ego, making it a divide and conquer game by appealing to the moral glorification of the self. And what I mean with that is, because we don't have this unified idea about what we should do or where we should go, everything becomes food for fight. Everything becomes something that we can be interested in to use and judge another. And so environmental ideas, although correct in the sense that we should worry about our planet, are not used to worry about the planet. They're used by culture to divide ourselves even more. Right? Instead of doing hard work and making choices and using the environment to align ourselves, we're now being divided by it. Because now you are a vegetarian and I like meat. Now you drive a bike while I fly around in private planes, right? So this whole subject, which is important to the culture and the collective, has now become the contents of our egos. And now I get to judge you because you make different choices than me. And it doesn't help us. It doesn't get us anywhere. It just makes me divide myself even more from you and make myself even a better person than I already was, because I have you to judge and appeal to my moral glorification, where I can say, well, at least I know better than him. The adult sees the ego as a function that it allows and aligns with. It seeks balance by both accepting its need for identity and glorification, that is the function of the ego, and aligning it with the tribe, nature, and a universal balance seeking. Meaning, an adult uses the functioning of both the culture and the ego to align it to a point in the future where it knows it wants to go. So it's like a strategic alignment of how the ego functions and how the culture functions, so that we can lose ourselves in our ego and culture can lose itself in culture, but we're still going in the right direction, because that is determined by its participants. Whereas the child ego seeks redemption by finding the right contents for self-glorification and not recognizing its function. So the ego, or the child, so to say, doesn't recognize ego as a function. It thinks it needs to have the right content in the ego for it to be right. So it's not about where do we want to go as a culture, or how can I make sure that the culture provides me with something to release my ego on that will help the culture and the balance increasing activities. Instead it says, no, it is found in choosing this or choosing that. So the choosing mechanism is ignored, and it's all about the choice. Which you know, it's like you can do that the rest of your life, and that's why a lot of people get stuck at this phase of identity, because they think they need to find the right identity instead of seeing through the function of identity, seeing that within them there's this need for identity, which can never be right or wrong. It's going on. You want to identify yourself. they think they need to find the right identity to identify themselves with. Because ego doesn't care about the fuel, it just wants to move, right? Ego is always interacting, always interpreting the world through itself, and it doesn't matter what it uses to interpret itself. It just wants to interpret itself, and whatever fuel is given by culture, it will use and it will align with. It doesn't matter. So by focusing on finding the right contents or fuel, people are slaves to the ego and culture, instead of seeing through it and using it as a tool to help them guide them, right? The higher strategic alignment allows them to let go in the lower daily self and still be aligned with the higher motivation. And the same goes for child culture and adult culture. Child perspective on culture is the external authority and validation of in function and adapting its contents as truth and unassailable. Meaning it creates victims. So the child looks at culture as it's just an authority that validates me. That's what it does. And it's up to me to adapt its contents as true and something I can't influence. I'm just a victim of the culture. Whereas the adult recognizes culture as a tool, as a medium of alignment, and aligning it with the function and using its contents to serve the adult, not the other way around. And it would seek to strengthen both the individual and the tribe and nudge its constituents towards balance seeking. There, that's what I thought. Original tribes have as the essential part of their awareness the seeking of balance. They try to be in balance with nature. They try to be in balance with each other. If there are different levels or different positions within the tribe, it's all functional. It's all about how can one help the tribe. And the greatest warrior will be the greatest warrior. Not to fight other people in the tribe, but to be respected for what he does for the tribe. And so he has glory and the tribe has glory. Because now people within the tribe will do all they can to be the best warrior for the tribe, making the tribe a stronger tribe, and also allowing the people within it to find glory for themselves and to have some sort of individualization. Whereas we now live in a tribe that says, fight amongst each other to decide who is the strongest warrior. And that makes us slaves to culture. That makes us fight each other. And that's really what's going on. This whole couple of 100 years that's been going on in the world of technology, business, and where we are going is all about divide and conquer. We are being separated. We are like gladiators put into a ring for entertainment. And we're fighting each other to show that we are the strongest. It's really making us weaker, both as individuals, because we're completely dependent on the external to decide what it is we should do to find glory and offer ourselves up to whatever game they make up. And we're fighting each other, so we're fighting our tribesmen, which makes us weaker even still. Anyway, just a few insights I had while watching a movie that I thought was cool to share. I'm really curious to think what you think about this and how you look at culture and the ego and what's going on there. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. If you like, appreciate it if you press some buttons, and I'll talk to you next time. Good luck.